So the group is part of a group therapy program in an intensive community treatment unit for adults with eating disorders. So the unit operates 5 days a week, Monday through to Friday. It provides 2 meals and 2 snacks and 3 therapy groups each day. And the group program is a mixture of more, I guess, formal psychotherapeutic type groups, but also planning groups, goal setting groups, and more reflective groups. So it's a whole sort of smorgasbord of different kinds of approaches. And our belief as a staff group is that you kind of need a whole multitude of different approaches because they don't all suit everybody, and we just live in hope that something will strike a chord with somebody that will be helpful to them. So there's a mix of CBT, DBT, as I say, goal setting, and relaxation, meditation, these kind of things, as well as this more active sort of action therapy approach. And I also did another group that was a group focused on people's interpersonal relationships within the unit. So it fitted in as part of a number of groups that happened across the course of a week, and it was every week, and didn't have a particular start or end. Some of our groups are sort of a 10-week schedule, and you know, at the beginning of the session you'll be told welcome to week 3. This is just a rolling program. I was thinking, actually, this has been a really well-reviewed group. The people who've engaged with it as part of their treatment they've said that they've enjoyed it, and they've said it's been different. They've said it's not been like any other kind of therapy they've had before. And you know, they kind of said it was a mix of always being emotional and interesting. And I think I shared that view and thought that has been interesting. I quite like the improvisational nature of it. It's quite exciting. And I thought, you know, I don't know whether other people are doing this. And I also thought that there was an invitation to write for Context in a special edition about working with adults. And I thought, you know, working with eating disorders with children and adolescents, the urge to externalize the eating disorder is really commonplace in working with adolescents. And I thought, actually, it doesn't. My experience working with adults with eating disorders was that really, really doesn't always resonate with adults, who often say, you know, you can tell when someone's been in CAMS because that's how they talk. But, you know, for me as an adult, I've been living with this for so long, I can't tell the difference between what's what's me. They're one and the same thing. And I think at that point with people, I was thinking, okay, so that's fine. But often the people I was working with would say that they did also have a sense of what they wanted to do with their lives, and that's how we hatched this. To what extent are you in the driving seat of your life metaphor, really? In order to be attending the unit, you'd have to have a fairly significant eating disorder. So primarily anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa were the primary sort of problems that people were bringing. But as anybody who works with eating disorders will know, those problems don't often come along on their own. They often like to bring their other complications along with them. Depression, anxiety, obsessional compulsive disorder, those kind of things. often a long-standing sense of not being good enough, and of not fitting in, which really interfere with people's ability to get on in a group. If you're always feeling that you're not good enough and everyone else is better than you, and you don't fit in to the group anyway, you're an outsider. And I think that was, part of the ethos of the group was to create a context where people felt accepted and connected to other people, and that whatever they had to bring or share was helpful, useful, and it did require quite a bit of active management from the group leaders to make sure that there wasn't, sort of criticism or any kind of overt judgment of people's work. We had tried using externalization in the kind of usual way, and it didn't really connect too well with people. But the idea that we asked people, to what extent do you feel yourself to be in the driving seat of your own life, seemed to connect well. And I'm quite used to doing action-oriented therapies or sculpting with families and those kind of things. So I felt quite okay to just turn the room that we were working in quite quickly into a set of 4 chairs in two and two, and say to someone, okay, well, why don't you have a go at sitting in the driving seat of your pretend life that we've just created here in this room. And people were quite quick to say, well, I'm not sure I'm okay in the driving seat. I'm more of a passenger in my own life, to be honest. And I said, okay, do you feel yourself to be a front seat passenger, or do you feel that yourself to be in the back seat of your life? And they said, oh, I'm firmly in the back seat. I've no idea where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. To be honest with you, I don't know who's driving. And people were unbelievably creative in where they would go with these metaphors. And I think I said in the article, the idea of the vehicle having a boot space came about by somebody who spontaneously said, of course, I'm quite, what's in the boot is causing a lot of problems for me as I'm going about my life. And so I just said naively, what's in what is in the boot? Would you care to share what's in your boot? And she said, well, my dead mother is in the boot, and I'm very affected by my relationship with her, even though she passed away many years ago. And went on to give a very emotional and very significant description of her relationship with her mum and the impact that she still had on her. And we had numerous examples that came about quite spontaneously, just through people positioning themselves within this make-believe vehicle. And it just, as I say in the article, we never had a plan. We would never have an agenda. We would always start with, does anybody feel like they want to do some particular work today? And often people would have discussed prior to the group who felt that they had something that they wanted to work on this week. So, which was also novel to have people saying, I'm keen to do something this week. Always different. So some people would say, oh, my car is going to have to be different to how we had it last week because it's a minibus, actually. Or somebody said, actually my vehicle, I don't know why, it's an aeroplane. And that particular person very strikingly spoke about being in the hold. He was not deserving of a seat on the plane, and so on. And interestingly described the cabin crew as the staff on the unit. And some of the passengers she described as being members of her family. So there were people who seemed to be able to achieve the best seats, and other people who were somewhat unruly at the back, who were causing trouble. And this just emerged from nothing. The way we ran it was that we would do a sort of an active sculpt, which would involve sometimes all of the group. They would be allocated by the main protagonist. The person who was doing most of the work might say, "Oh, it'd be really helpful if we could have some other people to sit in the other seats," and so on. So sometimes everybody would be involved, but always at the end, we would give people a chance to. We'd dismantle the car and return the seats to their place in the room. And we'd invite people to just adopt a slightly meta position to the work that had happened and just do some reflection on what was that like? How did each of us connect with that particular metaphor? What resonated well for us, and so on. I'd kind of try and dissuade people from asking questions and more just say, when you were talking about so and so, it really reminded me of the relationship I'd had with my mum in the past, or something. And I think what people would often say is that although they felt like they knew each other well, that seeing this very visual and very present representation really helped what the people who were attending every day get a really rich insight into other people's lives. And I think they felt that they really, really understood people differently, in a different way, at a different level, because often there's a sense of camaraderie around these units, that we're all suffering from the same problem when we're all very similar. Actually, what this did was introduce a lot of, wow, that's really different to how I see myself, or I hadn't realized you were suffering that way, or I hadn't realized that you wanted your mum to help you as much as you said today. So one of the great bits of feedback was around understanding of each other in very different ways. I think also people really liked being able to work kind of in secret. So you don't have, when you're talking about not wanting to look out of the front windscreen of your vehicle, you don't have to say why that is. You might just say, I never really look out the front of the windscreen. And I guess that's why life just seems to whiz past without me really knowing what's coming up. And I'm always dealing with the consequences of stuff that I wasn't expecting. And there's not really a need to go into too much content, but people seem to say, I get a lot of understanding about myself without having to talk about the specifics, or about all of the content. We can just notice the sort of process, or I didn't have to tell you all about exactly who I meant, but I could just talk about kind of people. So I think metaphor provides it seemed to provide a nice, safe way for people to do work that they felt was quite important, emotional, and quite deep, but without the need to make themselves hugely vulnerable in a group setting by exposing themselves. Any reservation or hesitation around engaging in this kind of work, it absolutely did not ever come from the group of people we were working with. Far more likely would come from a staff group. So I was astonished by the readiness and willingness of people to absolutely just jump into this way of working. A lot of my training pre-family therapy was in action-oriented therapies. I'm quite comfortable with getting up and moving around and so on. So I think if people do need to be comfortable with the method themselves, I don't think these ideas work well as techniques that you could kind of pull out of the box and try and implement as something I've read about. Um, so I don't know whether I've never been on the improvisation or spontaneity workshops that sometimes crop up at conferences, but I think uh, doing those kind of things would be helpful. I think being, as I say, being comfortable with acting spontaneously, at responding to feedback literally in the moment. I don't know. I just think you'd need to be comfortable with an action-oriented therapy.